Fluent Hustle believes in empowering entrepreneurs via a community of trust, sharing, learning, and growth to help entrepreneurial success and personal fulfillment is achieved. Capital One Cafe believes in empowering people to feel confident about the relationship with money by leveraging resources to solve their money problems and help them reach their financial goals. Both Fluent Hustle and Capital One Cafe are focused on helping people develop important life skills. Fluent Hustle wants to help entrepreneurs build their business, their network, and their world. Capital One Cafe wants to help people take control of their personal finances and achieve their goals as well. So today we have Aarón on with us to speak about what they're doing in the community overall, leading the community affairs and making some really changes that are hyper local to the community. He's going to be speaking about his role, what he's involved with, and more importantly, some of the projects that you've been very, very successful with since being part of Capital One. So if you can just share a little bit more about your experience with the Capital One Cafe and how important it is to you to really not just be inside in this particular building, the 3 walls, but the retail spaces you guys have from a cafe stance and how you really guys are driving the Capital One presence in the community.
Sure. So I'm part of the community affairs team at Capital One, and I have the great fortune of supporting all of our cafes across the country, and that's over 15 different markets. And we're really focused on, just like these spaces were designed to reimagine the banking experience for customers, everything that we do at Capital One is really about bringing that humanity to every single experience. And so when we talk about our community efforts and our community investments across the enterprise, we're really looking for organizations and nonprofits who are really driving impact as it relates to our Future Edge initiative, which is our philanthropic strategy designed to really ensure that more individuals have the skills and knowledge necessary to succeed in the digital economy. So we're supporting nonprofits that are leveraging programs and initiatives concentrated on 21st century skills, small business development, and financial well-being. As it relates to Denver, the way that community kind of takes form here, we have a lot of really great partnerships with organizations that are really best in class and really helping to drive that impact that I just mentioned. So organizations like Dress for Success Denver, the Young American Center for Financial Education, we support a program that they provide for low-income middle school students called Youth Biz, which really inspires students to continue education through entrepreneurship. Organizations like Heart and Hand and Dress for Success is really a special partnership for us because it's part of a much grander partnership that we have with them from a national perspective. We're supporting over 15 of their affiliates across our markets, and here in Denver we get to host a financial education program, which is a 13-week intensive series where a cohort about 20 women come in and receive valuable financial education training from our very own cafe ambassadors. So you can see the many ways that we interact within the communities that we share, but it's really, again, about bringing that humanity and that relationship-driven experience for our customers, for our nonprofit clients that we're supporting. And so that's a little bit about what we do.
Love it. And you oversee 15 different markets, and it's obviously got to be very taxing, but very gratifying at the same time. What consistencies are you noticing in each of these communities that's most imperative for Capital One to really step in and provide that difference?
Sure. So most of our community programming and a lot of the investments that we make to nonprofits is really focused on supporting organizations that are helping the most vulnerable populations. So these are underserved individuals who, may not live in the best neighborhoods or have the best resources available to them, so that we are contributing to helping kind of bridge the gap and help to provide, some supplemental support through our nonprofit partnerships. Every market that I visit, one of the kind of reoccurring themes that is very prevalent, in the U.S. and in our nation is the problem with gentrification and urban redevelopments, right, and people kind of being displaced. And so what we hear from our nonprofits is just how to how we can be partners to them in helping to mitigate the fact that a lot of the clients that they're serving have very unique and special needs as a result of kind of how their communities are transforming. And of course, we hear time and time again about just the lack of financial literacy in precisely in these subsets of the population who don't have those conversations, right? At the dinner table, or there's not that social capital that gets passed down from generation to generation. So that is one gap that we're very proud to fill. And again, a lot of that happens in wonderful spaces like our cafes.
And we love it. And we spoke about Dress for Success in the past, and when you guys get a chance, please go check it out. There's a video actually on Capital One Cafe's website that you guys can watch, and very touching. And I've been part of one of the events that you guys had here at this particular cafe, and be able to speak with these ladies and understand where they come from, the challenges they've been through, and it's very empowering to be able to see that, and inspiring to see how Capital One Cafe is really taking lead to make a difference in these ladies' lives. Future Edge, let's delve a little bit deeper into that, and understanding the digital components and resources you guys are able to provide within that program itself.
Sure. So Future Edge is our expression of social good. We launched Future Edge back in 2015 as a five-year investment of $150 million across our footprint, where our associates live and work. And as I mentioned, it's really our way to help support the great work that nonprofits are doing at the local level to help provide those experiences and those skills and knowledge and education to the individuals who need it most. And so that really, Future Edge really evolved from a couple of years worth of research that we conducted with a data analytics firm called Burning Glass Technologies. And we already knew, and it's pretty common knowledge that there's just a huge gap when it comes to education and skill within low to moderate income communities. We wanted to see what the opportunity for them if we were able to fill that gap, right? And so we were intently looking at kind of the middle skill job market, and found that now the statistics, it used to be 7 in 10, now it's 8 in 10 jobs in this middle skill job market, which are jobs that pay a living wage but don't necessarily require a formal education like a 4-year college degree. But about 8 in 10 of these jobs require some sort of technological or digital skill for prospective employees to even get their foot in the door. And that's the space that we wanted to play in and knew that we could make the most impact in. And so what Future Edge allows us to do is, there's a lot of great causes out there, Ira, and people and a lot of organizations doing really great work. Future Edge allows us to narrow in our focus on 3 different pillars, if you will: financial well-being, small business development, and 21st century skills, so that we can invest in work that will get more people the right jobs, better jobs, and so that we can be able to kind of pinpoint to the impact that we're making through those investments.
So over the course of you being heavily involved in working with these organizations, what are you most proud of to see as a success story you're able to share with us?
Well, I live in DC, and I work out of our headquarters office, and so I don't get to see the day-to-day impact that our ambassadors or our local folks get to see. And so when I get to visit the different markets and talk to the clients that are being supported through the investments that we're making in these nonprofits, that to me is validation that what Capital One is doing in the community space is working. Because you get to hear, these stories about lives being transformed as a result of, a financial education course, or the ability to, take some trainings on digital skills literacy, and so that to me, again, not only validates but it reminds me of just how much further we need to go. Yeah.
And I speak to ambassadors here on a regular basis, and when they tell me about the programs that are being initiated and the impact that you guys are able to provide, it's amazing. But there's definitely a lot of work that needs to be done. Like you said, there's other projects and organizations out there, but we all need to come together and work very, very hard to make sure we close that gap as quickly as possible, because like technology is moving quickly, and we need to make sure that the competency of the individuals of our future are also aligned with that moving technology as well. So Aarón, really appreciate it. We'll get you off here in a quick moment. But Amy, I say this over and over and over again. You have one of the best jobs in the world.
I do.
So Amy is a money coach, and she's really making it possible for individuals to become most confident about their money. This is a topic that people don't want to talk about.
True.
It's a topic that people feel ashamed of, and kind of going back to Aarón and understanding, if you're not having a conversation at the dinner table, or it's not part of life on a regular basis, it's never thought of, right? It's not top of mind.
Yeah.
But you make it so fun. And I was fortunately from our last show, an individual came here as a guest. One, they didn't understand, or they didn't know, I should say, that money coaching wasn't even an option for them. And they didn't understand that they had Capital One Café has the resource to provide this to an individual, whether you're a customer or not. This is a great opportunity for you to take advantage of the resources they have available. So if you can speak about what is money coaching in particular, and how you're able to make a difference in these individuals' lives.
So let me start off by saying that I'm actually a certified life coach, and I'm a professional money coach. So I like to meet customers wherever they're at inside their journey. And so we really help customers get clear on what their goals are. We can look at what the hurdles are that might be preventing them from getting there, and then also creating a plan to help them achieve their goal. So it's really it's a multi-step process to get someone from A to B and remove the hurdles to get them there.
So three things I want to really focus on, Amy, is values, vision, and priorities.
Yes.
And how important it is for individuals to understand these three components when it comes, to speak about their money and understanding their money. So if you can just kind of deep dive a little bit further into the importance of those three.
So I'll start with values. The great thing about values is once you understand what makes you tick, and not those value shopping that we typically do. A lot of times inside of a training, inside of like a corporate job, they'll have you circle, pick 5 values. And you're thinking, well, I should pick integrity. I should pick honesty, and we're shopping, right? Well, what really drives you? Maybe it's creativity, maybe it's adventure. And when you figure out what your special formula is, you can align your spending that way. So you're gonna get more fulfillment, more bang for your buck around your spend, which is really important. And like I said, even fulfillment, you're just going to be happier when you're living those values, whether that's inside of a job or a business that you're creating. So that's values. What was the second one?
Vision.
Vision, thank you. Vision is great because when you're really clear on your vision and not spending 2 minutes on it, spending days on it and really developing it out. And what does it look like? Who are you interacting with? What kind of products do you have? How are you serving people? When you envision that happy customer, what do they look like? When you're really clear on that, then you're focused and you're aligning your resources. And a lot of new entrepreneurs don't have a lot of resources to just, spread all over the place. So a clear vision is going to get them to that next step faster, with less waste around their resources. And then as far as priorities, those just sort of naturally fall out of a very clear vision. And so you know what you can say no to. Because that's one of the hardest things as an entrepreneur is knowing what to say no to. Because at this point, like everything looks like an opportunity.
Right.
You want to say yes, but you have to be able to pass on good so you can focus on great.
And doing a workshop with you, I remember going through, understanding the values and the vision and the priorities. And people, they'll go out there and spend their money either as a consumer individual or as a business owner, and they have guilt behind that. And that's because it's not in line with their values.
Right.
And I think I felt that and understood it, but when you were able to explain it to me, I was like, I had that aha moment.
Yeah.
Is understanding, recognizing, where you are with your money in that relationship and how confident you are about it. It's gonna make sure that it gives you the empowerment to go out there and make sure you use that money as a resource that can give you that fulfillment, as you mentioned earlier.
Yeah.
So thank you, Amy. John, get up here.
Thank
you. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Have a good one. Come right through there. So this is John Chapman.
Woo-hoo. You're in the hot seat. Woo.
Hello.
Hi.
Hello. How are you? worries.
You as well. And we got Chad in the house, so I just want to thank Chad for making an introduction to John. Quick backstory on how I met John. I had reached out to Chad. I was like, who is a business owner I need to get in touch with? And he said, you, John. He looks up to you. He's just, just really appreciative of the relationship you guys have and what you've done with your business. So I immediately drove over to his retail shop. And he was standing outside on the street, or not the street, but the sidewalk. And but he's greeting people as they're walking past. He's welcoming customers through the door, and he's just a big, jovial smile like on his face. I was like, there's something about this guy that's just very attracting. His personality is very attracting, and we had about 45 minutes impromptu just to kind of catch up. And I was like, hey, I'd love for you to come and speak with our audience on a Capital One Cafe partnership with us around financial confidence and money. And when you told me that you started your business in a 150 square foot space,
yes,
with no foot traffic, little marketing presence, off the street, it was very inspiring to kind of see how you've grown that over the course of 4 years, and now you're in a retail spot for the past year itself. So commend you for that. You get a round of applause for that, because that's. That's not an easy feat, and I know Amy's had a great opportunity to speak with you as well, but share your story with us. Tell us about who you are and how you got into business, and how you were able to grow your business to where it is today. And then Amy and I will work with you to kind of get deeper into that money component and what you're able to do, and I'll let you share the details with that.
Yeah, well, my name is John Chapman IV, co-owner of Lawrence and Larimer Clothing and Supply Company. So about 3.5, 4 years or so ago, my wife just kind of was like, yo, I want to start up a clothing company. And, kind of as a man, you're like, all right, I want to provide what she wants, yada, yada, but I don't know. She's not really going to do anything with it, that old story. But I just kind of stepped out on a limb and stepped out on faith, and we got it going. Some cousins of mine who actually own their own moving company, Around the Clock Movers, they had a little office space on 27th and Lawrence. And so as I was visiting with them, I noticed that there were a lot of vacancies in the shared office space that they were in. And so I went and I asked, them for the manager of the space and so on and so forth. Long story short, we started off in a very small space. Yes, as you said, 150 square feet, which is extremely small. I mean, it may have maxed out at 200, but we were only open on Saturdays and Sundays. And when we first opened, we started off, we would go to thrift stores, Goodwill or whatever, and we would revamp and kind of restore clothing, add patches, this and that to it. And the gentleman, Gil Simon, who was head of, I forget the name of this company. Anyway, so he comes in, Hang Tight, that's the name of this company, Hang Tight. So anyway, he comes in and he's like, hey, you guys need some branding, t-shirts and all. So I said, okay. So I drew up a very basic distressed Lawrence and Larimer t-shirt. We brought them out 2 weeks later and we sold out in a weekend, 30 shirts. And so that next month, it took me about a month or so to come up with the next design. Same thing happened that next month with a different design. So each month we would come out with something new and we would sell out. So some guys ended up buying that space and they wanted to up our rent. Our rent was only $350 a month.
Wow.
Which was,
your t-shirt paid itself.
Yeah, so some lawyers ended up buying it's actually called the Laundry on Lawrence building.
I know what that is.
Right there on 27th and Lawrence. So, and they wanted to up our rent, but we were locked into this $350 a month for the next year. And so they kind of came to us and said, hey, look, we see what you guys are doing. It's cool and all, but yeah, kind of got to get you guys out of here. We got to make some money here. So they agreed. We made an agreement, and they gave us a portion of our money back, and so on and so forth. And we were there for about almost a year, and we did a bunch of pop-up shops after we closed that down. And then after that, kind of a lesson on not burning bridges. A gentleman who I had met years ago, he had a space open and he ended up closing it down. I knew he was there. I called him up when he closed it down. I said, yo, what's going on with this space? He's like, man, if you want it, you're in. So I said, perfect. So I went, checked it out, and he left, he did some decorating in there, whatever, and he left it all in there for us. It was already set up perfectly for what we wanted to do. And we basically kind of doubled, I guess, our space from 150, 200 square feet to about 400 square feet. Now we're located right there on Colfax and Adams. Colfax and Steel, right next door to the Denver Biscuit Company and the Bluebird Theater. We're all right there. I mean, it's just kind of been a blessing, really, in disguise. I mean, how things really did move along, and people kind of came along like, yo, I'm here to help. Whatever you need, so on and so forth. People like Chad putting us in contact with the right people and us making the right moves.
And on Colfax, now you got foot traffic, but you leverage the community heavily early on, and I think that's a major component. Is how important, how did that turn out to be an importance to you by leveraging the community and going back and talking about not burning bridges as well, right? With the relationships from a branding perspective that you're able to come to where you are today.
Basically, it was simple. I won't say simple or easy marketing, but we knew that we were going into a new space as a new company. We'd only been around, well, we've been there now for a year, so we'd only been around for about 2.5 years at that time. So trying to really figure out how to get our name out there, really become familiar with those that were in the community. It was more like just hitting the pavement. I've done everything from my son, he did a root beer float drive. So we had a little window right next door, and he and his cousins opened it up and they did root beer floats for the community. We've done free hot dogs for the community. We've done all kind of stuff. We just partner up and collaborate with many different companies just right there in the area, and just really hit the pavement, putting flyers indoors, and however we can generate talk about our company just within the community. We know that the word will spread somehow, some way.
Right. And so your wife came to you, and she has a background in the industry, and she's like, hey, I want to open up this business. Financially, where were you guys at? And what did you do to prepare yourself to make that decision to go and pull the trigger to start the business? And what aggressive or conservative approaches did you take that might have backfired or came to fruition for you?
Man, I had $22.03 in my pocket. No. No. I had a little bit of a savings. We had just had our son. Having a baby is very expensive. I didn't know that having a child was as expensive as it is, right? So like that pretty much ate up a good amount of my savings, plus, her taking time off from work and so on and so forth. So that was like, okay. So when she wanted to open up the business, I'm like, she says that all the time, Yeah, we all say that, I guess. I want this, I want that, whatever. So, but my background and then her background, like it made sense. Right. It just made sense. So, and just kind of real quick, the way we were able to really build funds or at least save funds was on the t-shirt making process. I noticed that we were spending $11, $12, $13 to get these shirts made. In high school, I used to screen print as a little summer hustle or whatever. And so I was like, well, if I get back into it, teach myself the whole Illustrator, Photoshop, all that stuff, and invest this money now, we'll be able to save money in the long run. So it basically took me, I ended up building my own first screen printing machine, which was just one color. And from there, I had a couple of friends who own companies, and I said, hey, I'm making these shirts. If you guys want some shirts or whatever, I'll make them. And that was pretty much it for restaurants, Table 6 restaurant, Cigars on 6th, a few other places. So I made all these shirts for them. They were selling them. And so every month I would save that money to build or to grow, I should say, into another screen printing, an actual official screen printing machine. I went from one color to 4 colors, and now we got 6 colors and all this stuff. So it was kind of taking that. It was probably about $2,500 or so at the beginning, and investing it, knowing that we would save that much money and time over however many years.
Right.
So now we've built it up to where basically it's so easy for me to go in. If I wanted to give you guys an example, I made this sweatshirt last night. I was like, yo, what do I want to do? What do I want to wear? Whatever. So it's that easy. Good question. But I mean, it just kind of saved that much time and money, versus us having to, hey man, we need 20 more sweatshirts. Can you do that? Yes, no, okay, how long is it gonna take? 2-3 weeks, okay, blah, 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 So it's like, hey, if I make this investment now, which I didn't have much,
Sure.
saved up after having a child and all that, but I knew like over time, this is going to save us so much time and so much money.
So you took the time to go relearn a skill that you learned back in high school, you said, and then implemented a second business essentially by going business to business with local community businesses and say, hey, let me do this for you. I got the equipment, and then you took those dollars and rolled that into Lawrence and Larimer to keep on pushing ahead.
Yeah.
All right.
Well, I just want to point out real fast too, because you had a vision of where you wanted to take things. He was able to reinvest because he knew where he was trying to go.
Yeah.
A lot of times when you don't have that vision, everything looks good. And it's almost like the FOMO inside of your business, the fear of missing out. And you want to just spend that money everywhere. Yeah. Fancy marketing. When sometimes it's just building the machine that's going to make you money.
Yeah. I mean, it was and by all means, like, it was not easy. To give you an example, I didn't know how to dry the ink. You have to dry this plastisol ink at least 300 degrees. I didn't have the machinery to do that. So my first project that I did, what in your house heats up that fast?
Blow
The
dryer.
oven.
The oven. The oven. So I had 5 sweatshirts that I designed, and I put them in the oven to dry. I burned 2 of them, completely burned. Like, I was able to just tear them just like that. That's how bad I burned them. And one actually survived. My mom has that one sweatshirt that survived. And the other 2, I kind of burned those also, and they ended up being little towels. But I mean, that was just kind of a part of the learning process. Like, and watching YouTube videos. I mean, I probably I know a few times since we've opened up the business, at least 48 hours without sleep.
Right.
But I mean, it meant that much to me to be able to get this ball running to where it's like, I see where we can go. We just got to stay consistent and committed to this so we can get there.
So when I came to you, you had mentioned that you're a Capital One customer.
Yeah.
And last week you came here to take a tour of the cafe. What was your first impression? What was your experience? And also now speaking with Amy, prior to the show, what's your sentiment around, what Capital One Cafe and the Capital One are doing for their customers moving forward?
It was the worst experience of my life. No, it was a great experience. I walked in, they greeted me as soon as I walked in, and they saw the camera and everything, and I don't know if they knew exactly what was going on, and then I introduced myself. They're like, oh man, this is great, and we sat and we talked, and they just kind of gave me a nice little tour. I love it. Capital One, actually, when we started up, when we got the space that we're in now, I opened up a Capital One account, and Lord only knows, I'm trying to pay it off. But it's been good though. I mean, Capital One, it's been great. It was one of my first, I guess, credit card investments for our company, and it was one of the best moves that I could have made.
I like that you said investment right there, because a lot of businesses have to go out there and get financing one way or another, right? They're asking a personal friend. They have their savings account. They're going to a VC, venture capital funding. But you had the mindset to allow that line of credit to be an investment into your business.
Yeah.
And being responsible about it over the course of that time to be able to make that happen. Prior to getting into business, what was your relationship with money, and what have you learned throughout the last 4 years? To give some advice to individuals about that.
Amy and I spoke about this earlier, but my father, he always worked. My mom, she was always worked. My dad, he was more, or my father, whatever. He was the risk taker. My mom was not. So it's kind of like I'm right in between there, to where sometimes it's like, yes, let's go do it, and then sometimes like, nah, So I'm sure there's been moments in which I've thought myself out of some great investments, possibly, I don't know. But then on the other side of that, there's been many times in which I made some silly moves with money. Being in a business now and full on like that, and we have a couple of employees and everything now. So, and as I was explaining to you earlier, it's like, even though they may not be depending on that money to really pay bills, or they might, I don't know, but I feel like their lives are somewhat in my hands somehow, some way. So if anything happens financially to Lawrence and Larimer, I still have to make sure that the employees are taken care of financially. They still have to get paid. I've always believed in somehow, some way, you have to get compensated for what you're doing.
Of course.
You know, so it's an honor now to be able to be in that position to, you know, be able to pay employees and do all that stuff. But it's scary at moments also, because there are investments that I want to make, but I need to make sure that Lawrence and Larimer's business account and investments and everything stay at least above, you know, water, so that we're able to operate and everything, and then everything else just kind of falls into place.
Well, and that's one of the things that we talked about was maybe the old you, the more impulsive you would have said, yeah, let's do it, because you could take those risks. And now he's really set a threshold that, you know, I've got to maintain an account with X amount of dollars, because at the end of the month I have to pay these folks.
Yeah.
And you feel a responsibility around that. And so that's probably something to think about is, you know, what are your expenses and what do you need to cover those? And, you know, gamble a little bit above that.
Yeah.
You got to I mean, you got to take some risks as an
take a risk,
entrepreneur,
sure.
right?
You definitely do.
But I love that it just shows how much you care about the people that you work with.
Definitely.
That at the end of the day, you're like, I'm going to only gamble to a point because I want to take care of them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's and it's interesting, because going back to me having the screen printing company and all, I realized that we're able to save so much money and time, as I was saying, with that. So my gambles that I'm able to take now are a little bit more, they're not extensive gambles anymore as they would have been before. If we were still spending $13, $14, $15 to get these shirts made, then we'd have to sell them at, you know, $35, $40, versus now, since I'm making them and we cut down on all that time and all that money that we're spending, now we're able to safely sell those at $20, $25. Even when we're able to put them on sale, it's like, okay, we can put them on sale for lower than whoever else,
Right.
you know, and still be able to. And of course, you know, the more we're growing, the more overhead we're starting to acquire and such, which is fine. That's understandable. But I'm able and happy to say that we're growing to the point where, you know, we're able to take on that higher overhead and be like able to breathe still.
Right.
You know.
Well, and I just, as a money coach too, I work with a lot of people that don't want to look at their finances, personal finances or their business finances. And if you don't know your numbers, if you don't know what your overhead is, if you don't know what your costs are, how do you know what to charge? And are you really going to be profitable in the long run? Because if you're not, then it's a hobby.
Yeah.
Right?
Very true. Very true.
You work really hard. You probably don't want it to be a hobby.
Yeah, don't want it to be a hobby. And it's funny that you mentioned that. I was talking to another friend of mine and saying that we want to make that transition from being just a hobby or, oh, this is just something for fun, into being a full-on professional institute. You know, when people walk into Lawrence and Larimer, they're greeted by us. They feel like, okay, this isn't just some, you know, something we put together overnight. Like, yo, this is something that is growing and is going to be huge.
And you're recognized, you know, throughout Denver, internationally, and you're able definitely to. But I mean, when I walked into your business, like I was taken back. One, the owner standing outside at the doorsteps, greeting someone walking in, not heard of very often, right? You know, not today, not from what I can tell. But I remember another lady. She walked in with her dog, and the dog and her were walking around looking at, you know, articles of clothing. She was an older lady. But you said, Iris, without saying Iris, stop. You stopped me and you put your full focus on her, and as if she was the most important customer that's window shopping that you ever came across. And it's so small little details like that you know, again, I want to commend you on,
Thank you.
in particular. So
People remember that, you know. I mean, I grew up in the industry of fashion, and I worked for Ralph Lauren for some years, done the whole New York Fashion Week thing, but that was one of the biggest things at the retail store was customer service. You know, when people walk in, they want, whether they're going to buy something or not, and you never know who's going to buy anything. So, but they want to feel greeted. They want to feel like you have the absolute best customer service in the world. So it's more like we have our waters now. Hey, would you like a water? We have a sponsorship with Red Bulls. Like, you know, would you like that? Would you, you know, we want to make you feel comfortable when you come in, whether you spend $10, $5, or $100, or nothing at all. You're going to remember next time you walk past Lawrence and Larimer, like, oh, let me go in here and just say hi. I don't care. You know, I just want people to know Lawrence and Larimer. So 10, 15 years from now, like, I remember when I walked into that store and that was the only store that they had on Colfax and yada yada, you know. So it's about, for me, building that long-term relationship. Yes, that's fine that we can sit here and talk for the next 5 minutes, but I don't want you to forget those 5 minutes. I want you to remember those 5 minutes 10, 15 years from now.
Impressive. I love it.
Let's say I actually think that's something that your business has in common with Capital One, in that we want you to just come in, feel welcome. We want to have a relationship with the customers that are coming inside of here. And, you know, I offer the free money coaching. Maybe they're not a Capital One customer. Maybe they're not a Capital One customer for a year. But 2 years from now, if they open a business and they need something, maybe they will be. So it's the long game.
Yeah, it's long term. You gotta think long term.
So prior to getting in the business, were you aware of money coaching? Did you take any money coaching courses? Like, you know, was there anything out there to say, you know, hey, John, like, here's what you should be understanding about money, so that way you can be most confident within your business?
No. The only money coaching that I ever had was my uncle telling me, he said, look, man, if something costs $10 and you only got $7, then you don't need it. And he's like, all right.
That's pretty good advice.
Yeah. It's like, you know, and then my dad, you know, growing up, he was always like, hey, I remember my first official job was at Fazoli's in Aurora. And he got me the job, where I got the job there, and then he pulled up like 2 weeks or so after I got the job. He pulls up in this little blue car. He's like, hey man, this is your car. I'm like, oh man, cool. He's like, well, actually, I got it, and we got to pay your uncle back because it was his car and yada yada. And like, he goes through this whole story, and I'm like, okay. And so, but he would take half of each of my check to get this car paid off, because he's like, you don't want to owe anybody any money. That's not the name of the game. You don't. People owing you and paying you money, that's where you want to be. Like, you want to be the bank and yada yada. So I've always kind of like had that in my head, which kind of works, but it doesn't work as a business owner,
Right.
because I don't necessarily like to owe anybody any money, you
Sure.
know. So I had a hard time really understanding investments. I had a hard time really understanding, and I still do, I guess, to this point, or to this day, understanding when people are like, hey, I'd love to invest in your company. And for me, it's like, okay, let's sit down and really talk about what that investment looks like. And I mean, it means a lot to me to be able to say my wife and I own 100% of Lawrence and Larimer. You know, I mean, I don't know. Chime in and let me know, is that a good thing, a bad thing, or?
Well, I think there's no good or bad, first of all. I mean, everybody gets to, you know, make their own decisions. I think as society, people chime in, oh, you should never do that, right? Or you have that outspoken uncle or maybe an outspoken parent that tells you what you should be doing. What's interesting about that is, you know, a lot of times they don't know what they're talking about, right?
Okay.
They don't have that business. They don't run that business. They don't know the numbers of the business. So I think it just really is going back to that first step of understanding what your costs are and the long-term vision. You know, if you and your wife want to hold the company, and maybe you don't want to invite in other people, or maybe you do want to grow and you do need to give away 25% of the company, you know, for money, like, to figure that part out. But the thing is you're in control.
Yeah.
Because you do know what your numbers are, and you do have the vision, and as long as you and your wife are, you know, talking about that, you get to decide. There is no right or wrong answer.
And the three things earlier, you know, understanding, you know, your values under the business perspective. So your values, your wife's values, merging those two together and making sure that those values are in line with the business.
Yeah.
The vision, you know, where do you guys see yourself 2, 3, 4, 5, 15 years down the road? And then prioritizing that, you know, and understanding that, you know, if these aren't within our priorities in our business, then the easy answer should be no, right? But it takes time to get to that point. It takes dialogue, conversation, comfortability, and making sure that the confidence, you know, for each of you are obviously at the highest level possible to make that decision. There you go. Great way to end the show. So again, this is Aarón Almada, the founder of Fluent Hustle. Here with John, the owner of Lawrence and Larimer, Amy Westbrook, Capital One Cafe's money coach. We really appreciate everyone in the audience being here and being part of this experience. And if you're watching online, please like and share. That's it. Take care, guys.
Thank you.